Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the supplies that we're going to need for your Bloom Paint Along for Joy class. First of all, we're going to be using an 11 by 14 canvas. Better to buy them in student packs. You're going to get a lot better deal. Easels, yes or no? I like painting flat for this because of some of the paints that we're going to be thinning down lend themselves more to that flat work, so you don't have any drips happening. We're going to be transferring our design with graphite paper. What I've done is I've created a download that will go through all of these different materials, so you don't have to write down or remember any of these that I'm talking about. I like to use Lucas Studio paints. I'm using Lucas Krill Studio paints for a couple different reasons. First of all, they've got a good price point while they still have a medium body. You don't want a heavy body acrylic because they're so thick and they dry so quick. This allows your students to be able to work their acrylic a little bit while it's still moist. So let's go through some of the colors. We've got a lemon yellow. They're all listed for you, okay? We've got a lavender, lemon yellow, Arctic, which is a light blue color, fluorescent magenta, just a really great color. And I love these again, just because you've got the cap right here. And also you're gonna be able to spread that onto the students' plates so that they can follow along a lot easier. It's just going to make your life a little bit simpler. So that fluorescent magenta, chrome green, which is a nice lime green, and then lastly, a cyan blue. One of the places I went to was Dick Blick's Arts. Amazon has these. You're going to find a good price point on Jerry's Art-A-Rama, strange as it may seem. You'll need a clean eraser, you're going to need a pen, you're going to need some brushes. So brushes are important, especially if you're dealing with students. You want to have enough so that everyone has the right brushes they need. And if you clean them, you're going to be able to use them over and over again. You know, I mean, that's our goal, and to teach people how to take care of their brushes along the way. So I have 3 brushes. One is a 14. You can either use a flat, or this is a little bit rounded. You might notice that. I've got a small round. This is called a round tip, which is nice for outlining, for leaving a line. You'll need that, and especially when it comes to the lettering. We've got a great way to put our word in there, Bloom. And remember, everybody's going away from this a success and feeling as though they have, they've rivaled Picasso with their masterpiece, right? They're taking home their piece of artwork. And so I have a larger, it can be a square, can be a round. So these are the 3 brushes I've used. You can get away with using just a large and a small, but this is what I recommend. So get ready. Have water out on the tables, paper towels for everybody, because we're working and creating this art called Bloom. But I want to talk to you a little bit about artists and inspiration, and maybe you've heard it before, but a lot of art, the very greatest art sometimes, is born from a time, whether that's acting or music, this time in the artist's life where they're journeying through a personal time of loss, and it might be so deep that they can hardly breathe, right? But their pain and their brokenness finds its expression, and it comes out in their art. We're transported into the place that they've taken us, and there's beauty and there's understanding in that place. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Death Valley and this phenomena that occurs only about every 10 years, and it hasn't occurred right now since 2015. It's called Blooms in the Desert, Death Valley's Super Bloom. And Death Valley, as you know, it's the hottest and the lowest and the driest place in all of North America. And so when such harsh conditions exist, it seems impossible, really, for anything to grow, let alone flower, the blooming of wildflower seeds as they take hold and they bloom. But they do. And they do. And who knows, maybe this is the year we're going to see that again. But for this to happen, there has to be a period of cold, of winter, of frost, and then spring rains have to happen between 2 and 3 months. And there has to be a gentle wind that actually brings the wildflower seeds, and they have to cling onto the sand because the moisture has happened, right? The roots take hold. And so then what was desolate becomes joy and beauty. So despite its name, Death Valley, life comes into this valley of death, and these seeds find root in the right place, at the right time, and under the right conditions. Well, this is my question then. What might it look like for you or I to be rooted in the right place spiritually? Psalms 92:4 tells us that we've become reflections of God's goodness. Well, we're like blooms in the desert. You thrill me, O Lord, with all that you have done for me. I can sing because of what you have done. And then even in this place, in our valley of death, those times of our life, we can point to the source. It's God. It's He who prepares the soil, right? He brings the cool of night. He brings the warmth of the sun. He's the one whose whisper calls the seeds at just the right time, and He carries them onto the wind. His Spirit in the most desolate times, sorrowful times of our life. Well, the sky opens up and the water comes. The water comes and brings new life as seedlings grow and as blooms open and turn their faces toward the Creator. Now, when I look at my own life, I can see God's hand, sometimes in those hardest times, unspeakable times of my life. And it was in those times, perhaps, that I produced some of my most meaningful art. I found lessons in those places, and I grew in ways that prepared me for ministry to others who were broken and walking through the same experience at different times in my life. I began seeing God in the ordinary. And I began to recognize the dew on the dry sand at times. And so I guess today what I want to do as we focus on our painting and our creating is just to remind you, you're loved. And you might feel broken today. Nobody really knows what you've walked through, perhaps. Maybe you've hid it very well. Maybe you're barely holding on, or maybe you're questioning your faith. Maybe you're crying out to God for His presence just to help you to get up in the morning. But hear this, you are precious. That bloom is coming. That time is coming, that miracle. Listen to the wind, the whisper of the Spirit. I created you, and I'm so in love with you, says our God. Seeds are being planted now that will bloom in God's time, in this dry place. I am here, and that's a promise we can count on. Reach out to God in this time of waiting, because that bloom is going to be yours. The very first step we're going to do in our Bloom Paint Along for Joy class is to transfer our design with graphite transfer paper onto the canvas itself. And that's going to give us the very best chance that we have for even those who are beginners level to go away with an amazing end product. And that's our goal. We want everyone to go away feeling as though something inside this inspiring place has just bloomed. So in your download, there is the design itself. We're going to be transferring our design onto 11 by 14 student canvas because transfer paper has carbon on it. So this is graphite. On one side, on the other side, it's paper. And so we're going to put it face down onto our 11 by 14 canvas. And then we're going to just absolutely trace the design onto the canvas. But it's important that the graphite paper that you get is wax-free. Make sure it's wax-free because paint will not adhere. It'll just kind of repel if you use a waxed graphite paper. Here's the type that I use, and go ahead and feel free to Google that and Amazon it. So I want this to be able to, with pressure, be transferred to the top of the canvas, but knowing that the canvas has it has a little bit of give, right? So what we want to do is to put a book underneath, and that way, this book, and use a book that you're not too Don't feel too bad about it. And we're going to take and put our carbon paper on the bottom and decide where the design is going to be, because we've got that word bloom that's going to go up here on top. All this you can download. So our design is going to go on the lower 2/3 of your canvas, and then we'll put the words up a little bit higher. Let's just mentally space it on the sides. And then we're thinking we want to leave room for the word on top. Make it at least maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches off of the bottom. Remembering there's a book underneath, so we're going to be able to really press hard. We'll do the flowers in the center, so the large flowers perhaps, and you're going to be pressing down a bit because you want to transfer this. Can you see what's happening? Isn't that great? And just move through the design, following the lines that have been set for you. The big flowers first, only because it'll help you remember what you've done and what you haven't done. I've done all 3 of the flowers. Now I have as well some smaller flowers, and I'm going to work clockwise only because it helps me to remember where I've begun, so I'll know when I'm finished. If you're a perfectionist, you've got to kind of let it go a little bit, because these are approximate shapes. You're going to be filling them in with paint anyway. We're moving to the flower, the smaller bloom at 9 o'clock. Our little blue lavender flowers at the top, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to catch the stem and the outline of the flower. I know that there's 3 of them. And you'll notice I've got my hands out holding the paper flat. Keep tracing. I'll see you at the end. You might want to go ahead and check to make sure that you've caught all of the design. Well, it looks like I have. It looks like I'm ready. I'll remove my graphite paper and my pattern, and voila, I'm ready for the next step. Ready to start painting. Are you? We've transferred our design onto the canvas, and now we're going to work on the background. I do want to let you know that we're going to be working on the sides as well as the top, because it's unlikely that this thing is ever going to get framed. So you're going to want to allow the art to just wrap around the sides and be the frame. We're going to start with our Lucas Krill Studio cyan blue. It's really a primary blue. And we're going to create almost a wash that is going to go over the top, but we want to have the color to be transparent enough that we can see the design through the background. So let's go ahead and start. You've got that on your palette, but you're going to want to thin it down with a little bit of water. You'll know when it's thin enough because you'll be able to see through it. So this still looks like about a medium. If you get paint on your hands, listen, that's the true sign of an artist. Congratulations. A little bit thinner. It's almost a creamer consistency, but when I stir it, I can see the white now coming through the bottom. So I'm really creating a wash here. All right, you see when I stir it, I can see that white coming up through the bottom. I'm using my larger brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and start painting the background. I'm gonna paint off to the side and then move in just so I can see. Can I see through it? Not real well. Let's bring a little bit more water into that. There I go. Can you see the design through that? You can add a little bit more water, even to the top as you go to your canvas. This is very much a wash, but we're going to cover the whole top. Actually, it is so much better if you see some of the brush strokes, because that's the style we're looking for, is kind of a free, open style. Let go of your inhibitions. Just start. It is almost a watercolor kind of a background, which is really nice. I'm going to go a little bit darker around the outsides maybe. If I feel like it's getting too dark or that I cannot see the transfer through the design, then I'm going to add water. And you can add water right to the top of this while you're working. But before we go on to the next step, you're going to have to make sure that it is completely dry, because we're going to be adding white on top of it, and we don't want it to become a light blue. Remember I said that we're going to use the sides of the canvas as well as the top? You might want to lift off the sides just a little bit. Save your top a little bit, the top of your table. We're going to be working with several layers. The layers actually will add interest and depth. This is really one of those styles that is almost serendipitous and happy. And when you think of blooms, do you see how uneasy or uneven that is? It makes me happy. So you can see how I want all the sides to be finished. If you feel like it's getting too thick, you can always add a little bit of water right to the top of it. You're painting the sides, remember? Keep going. Finish this background. And I'll meet you at the end. Remember all four sides. And I'm going to even add a little bit of water as I go. And look what you've done. You've painted a wonderful background. And I'm going to let this dry just a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead onto the next step. Within about 5 minutes, your painting should be ready to move on to the next step, which is going to be your white outline of all of the transfer work that you've done. So I've changed to my smaller brush. This is a size 6, but anything a 4 to a 6 is going to be okay. It has a sharper tip. It's not a square tip. I'm going to add just a little bit of water to my white. And I'm going to work outlining each of the lines that I've transferred on. The background should be all dry by now. Hopefully you've been able to chat with friends just a little bit, maybe introduce yourself. And I'm working on outlining all of the different flowers. This is a skill that is not exact, and it doesn't have to be. So kind of relax into it. Think about coloring as a kid, and just, it's like, do your best. And if it's not perfect, you know what? Then it's not. This is one of those kind of paintings that it's just not gonna matter. So we're outlining all of the lines that we've traced on with our graphite paper. Because we didn't use wax paper, we are so fortunate we don't have wax. Because if it was wax paper, then what would happen was the paint would actually want to resist those areas. Something wonderful is going to be happening. Hold off on doing the leaves at the bottom and the vase. Do everything else first, because I want to show you a little trick we're going to do to visually give our painting some depth. Remember that anytime you want to, if I'm moving faster than you are and you want to allow some space for everyone to catch up, for either you to catch up, or if you're doing this as a group, just go ahead and put me on pause. So remember I said, go ahead and outline everything, but not these bottom leaves or the vase. Remember that. When it comes time to do the leaf and the vase, first of all, put in the 2 flowers on top, because that will give the illusion that the flowers are in the foreground, which they are, by the way. And then I want you to just, with your imagination, okay, come along with me on this journey. We're going to allow about 1/4 of an inch around each of these so that it looks as though the vase is behind and the leaves are behind what we've painted. Let me explain that. Underneath, you see how I didn't fill that in? That's going to make it look as though this leaf were in the background. So I'm painting the outside of the leaf, but I'm not painting it all the way up into the flower. I'm leaving that 1/4 inch space. Don't start your vase all the way up at the flower, but 1/4 inch down. We'll paint the sides 1/4 inch down, right? And then watch this. Here's a little magic happening. Look at that, all around. You've now just set the vase behind. And then repeat that same technique on the leaf on the left. So when you look at your outlined design, you're looking at all of the bouquet and the greenery coming forward. The two leaves on either side of the vase set out 1/4 of an inch, as well as the vase. So there we go. What I want you to do now is going to be just cathartic. It's going to be wonderful. Relax into it. Enjoy the music. And we're going to give one coat to the inside of everything that we've just outlined. How are you doing? Easy, easy. Don't even worry about the brush strokes. If they're showing through, if they're not all smooth, don't get concerned. We're going to put another layer on top of them. And through the process of painting, we're going to be adding several layers on top. So it almost will look like journal art. So when you're all done, go ahead and clean out your brush. Be sure to just make great use of these paper towels because we want to get all the paint off your brushes. And if you notice, I even turn the brush a little bit as I wipe, and that just gets all the water out and all the color out. That's the way we take care of our brushes as we go. I'm switching out to a larger brush because I'm going to add a second coat over everything that I've done already, and I'm filling in those large spaces. This should go a little bit faster because you've already put down the first layer. Remember, we're adding more paint on top of this, but we don't really want the blue to be showing through now at this point. We're just putting quite a bit on, but we don't want it too thick because every time you add more paint, you're going to have to remember the drying time as well, because we're going to be putting on our, we're going to be doing the big flowers first. So right now, as you're filling these in, you might be thinking, oh, I need to fill in the big flowers first because I'm going to be adding color on top of them. We're going to watch them bloom. By the time we're done, they're absolutely going to pop out of this background. You're going to love it. All of the different layers. This doesn't have to be exact, so give yourself a little bit of a break. If I don't go all the way to the edge, it's fine. There's going to be more layers. It's okay. You don't have to add very much water to your paint at all because we want to use it in this medium consistency because that's going to speed up the drying time. Acrylic, I tell you, it dries so quick, you have to move while it's still moist. There's some tricks and there's some things you can do to slow it down, different mediums that you can add to it. Mediums that give it texture, slow the drying process down. But right now we're just using it at almost 100% consistency, and that way we're really going to be ready for what comes next. And lastly, we'll give the vase a good base. What's fun is if you don't get quite to the edge, you almost get this chalkboard kind of a fade, that's a fun technique. My vase took a little bit different shape, and so I'm going to straighten it out right now. Somebody told me that the difference between a professional and an amateur is that a professional knows how to cover their mistakes. So here we are, and we're ready for our flowers, and we're going to start that in just a minute. We're going to fade to black, and then when you're done, then go ahead and turn on the video again, and we'll be ready to start our flowers. We're at the place now where we're going to fill in the flowers, start layering in some great technique that I'm going to believe you are going to be repeating over and over and perhaps teaching forward. But using two colors, you'll notice on the palette I have some lemon yellow and also some fluorescent magenta. I have a little bit of white on my palette plate as well. So what we're going to do is each flower has just off center. We're going to be working these three larger flowers, and just off center a little bit, begin 100% with paint, and we're going to use a bit of paint, okay, because in using these two colors, the lemon yellow and the translucent magenta or the fluorescent magenta, we're going to get this third color that happens just as a result of the blending of the two. And we're using 100%. We're not adding water to this. So you can see I'm kind of dabbing around. I'm playing at it, and I have put quite a bit on the end of my brush. We're going to start by making the letter C kind of against itself. So one side, then the other. One side and then the other. You can see already the flowers starting to come out. One side and then the other. Layer in some leaves here. Big C's. One side, then the other. One side, then the other. And I'm moving towards the outside. If a little bit gets on the blue, don't worry, it'll actually kind of give it more depth, which is interesting. So we're working in C's away from the center. Now, without even cleaning my brush, I'm going to dip into the yellow. Maybe I'll clean it off a little bit, okay? But the idea is that the colors are going to blend together. So there I am. I've got quite a bit on there. And by putting this into the first color, we're going to get a third color. So C's again. C's. C's. Can you see that? And isn't that great? I just love what's happening. Can you see them become that third color? Big C's. I want to add a little bit more. You can add in more yellow because I want that yellow to show through. And maybe then even a little bit more pink. Because I don't want it just to be two colors. I want that to show through. Let's move on to the second. It's almost like if you do it too much, there's just a point to where you go, and we're done. If you need a little bit more pink, then so be it. This one, I think I'm going to kind of learn my lesson and not put quite as much yellow in. C's, C on this side, C on that side. Can you see it coming out? And then layering in the yellow. Some in the middle. It's really very bright. I think I'd even like to put in a little bit of white. Yeah, nice. That white just tones it down just a tiny bit. I'm going to put a little white in this here too. nice. Now we're doing the third. I'm not seeing as much pink, which means that I've got to add more pink. The great thing about the Lucas Krill Studio paints is that the cap never gets lost. And if you're teaching, you might have these paints in one location so that if people need more paints, they can just walk over and get some more themselves. My nice C's. A little bit of yellow. And even a little white. The white makes me happy. What do you think? Are you playing around with yours? Go ahead, have some fun. Just kind of has a creamy look, and that's what I want to see. We're going to move on to the next flowers, and you'll need some more titanium white because these littler flowers are going to be done in white and pink. Same technique. Fewer petals though because of the size, so they're smaller. Use some pink. I think I'd actually feel more comfortable using my smaller brush. What do you think? If you feel like your brush strokes would be just a little bit smaller, a little bit more controlled, still making C's. And I'm going to do all of them C, C. Just add a little bit more pink to my big one. I've cleaned my brush, and now I'm going to go back in with the white. On the smaller 5 little flowers. I love the way the paint blends because we're working wet on wet. Working in C's, it's not a new technique now. Now you're a pro. If you have a journal or a sketchbook, you can even go ahead and practice on watercolor paper or sketch paper. All right, there we have our flowers. They're happy, they've begun to bloom. And we're going to move on to our purple flowers. And to get the purple flowers, we're going to take a little bit of the Arctic blue and some of the purple. The Arctic blue and some of the lavender. First, we'll layer in the lavender and then the purple. I'll be working with my smaller brush because you're moving into a smaller space. We're going to take advantage of the layers, first putting in some blue and then the lavender on top. Remember, because we've already put the white down, I think let's let it speak. We're going to put in some of the blue, but not all the way to the edges. And then the lavender. So I want some of the blue to still show through, and against this elementary blue, this elementary color, we're really almost having a little bit of a green look going on, aren't we? But I think it's going to be very pretty with the vase. So almost to the outside, but letting a little bit. There they go. I'm going to take a tiny bit of pink and just put it on the bottom. Kind of makes it tie in a little bit. And we'll clean that off before moving to the leaves. For the leaves, I'm going to turn my palette because I need a little bit of yellow that's clean. So for the leaves, you're going to need the yellow. That's a lemon yellow, the chrome green light, and then we'll use a little bit more of the Arctic again. Using the smaller brush, we're going to coat. Let's make sure it's clean. I'm adding just a little bit of water, thin it down just a tiny bit. And I'm going to go into the leaves, covering almost all of them. Let's not think too heavily on this, okay? We want to go almost all the way to the edge, and we're doing the stems. If you've got a little bit of white showing through, the look is going to be really good. Wait till you see the background. We're going to have almost a chalkboard, faded, creamy background of which we're going to layer in our theme of bloom. But all these little glimpses of white that are left are going to show through. It's going to make it all come forward. Remember that we have 2 leaves here in the foreground, and paint them. I've left a little bit of white showing. Left a little white showing again at the end. At the ends here, I've left a little white showing here, little white around the outsides. The green, don't put it on 100%. Go ahead, leave a little bit of yellow on your brush because we don't want a heavy, heavy coat. You want almost a neon green to emerge. And we're going to be applying it in such a way that some of the yellow still shows up. Let's go almost to the edges. Can you see what's happening? It's not a dark, dark green. I may even want it a little more green. But because the yellow is still not dry underneath it, you can kind of blend them together and get that great neon color. It's happy. If I was a little leaf, I would want to be these leaves right here. Allow some of the yellow to still show through. You're creating almost this brightness, this depth, because really we're working with a 2D image, but we're giving it depth by the ways that we're applying our paint. Now I'm going to, since I left the white highlight and the yellow, I'm going to go heavier on the top, a little darker on the top, and then bring it out almost like rays of the sun. Can you see that? So that's going to really give it a little bit more depth, and you can even add another layer. Make it a little darker. See how it's blended in there? Okay, now that just makes me happy. Do the same thing on the other side. Remember, we've left that small space for depth so that our blooms can really start emerging. Get a little bit of water here because my paint has dried, as acrylics do. And that looks amazing. Take a little bit of Arctic, and mix it in with your green. So can you see it's almost an aqua color that is there? And I want you just to apply a little bit in the center of your leaves. Where did it go? There it is. Don't put too much of it in there, but enough that we're adding just a little bit more depth. and especially closer to the bouquet. Then along the tops of your flowers, leaves, I apologize. We'll just add a little bit more. That same Arctic blue and fluorescent green mix. And there you have it. I think it's time to move on to the vase. The vase is that great lavender again. And to our lavender, let's go ahead and add a little bit of water so that the white does show through just a little bit. We want it just a little translucent. But cover it all. Let's cover it all. I'm leaving the outside a little bit. A little bit white. Just kind of echoing the style that we've done across our entire painting. On this, I've almost run out of paint, and then I'm still dragging the paint around. It's called a dry brush technique, in the very loosest sense. And then to the top of the lavender, we're going to add some more of the Arctic blue and green mix. So back to the green and blue mix. Let's find the Arctic blue and the green, so we get that great aqua color. And I'm going to just put it in on the top, still allowing some of the lavender to show through, because it's all these colors together. You might think, oh, I'm not sure that those work together, but they do. Then across the bottom, I'm just going to add more lavender. Okay, and I'm happy with that. We got to just kind of think, I'm going to let it be. I'm going to let it be. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with the next step because we're going to use a lot of white. So if you have to clean off your palette, go ahead and do that because we're working on the background again. Titanium white. Let's use the smaller brush and mixing a little bit of water, just a little, into the white. And what we're going to do is that same technique that we used when we allowed there to be a 1/4 inch around here, we're going to do that with our whole design. We're going to start working around the outside about 1/4 inch away. So we're framing it in, but allowing that blue to still remain. And then while we're working, then let's just paint it out. Let's just fill in some of that space, but allow some of the blue still to show through. So if you've got brush strokes, don't worry because we're going to add another layer even on top of that. And every time you start going around another corner, and before it dries, you might just want to fill in that area. Your brush strokes don't matter, you're okay. We're going to come back in and work with it again later. And let's keep working around the painting that we've already done. And especially remember little areas such as this. You're going to want to have little fill-ins. About 1/4 of an inch, and then go back in. Fill it in. Keep going, and I will see you when we have this portion done. When you've got this far, you might want to take a look and see any little areas that you might want to add in a little bit of white. I see an area here, just a little area here, maybe here. And I think we're about done if you're just looking into the center of it. But let's go ahead and take this white and continue to move outwards, and we're going to do the sides as well. So you can use this brush if you like. Go ahead and switch to your larger brush because that's going to allow you to work a little bit faster. Yes, we can see your brush strokes. Don't stress about it. Remember when we did our outsides, we covered even the sides, which is a good thing, okay? So go ahead. Leave little pieces of blue showing though. I love to see the layers coming through. I'm going to go ahead and do this whole side so you can see it. And I'm going to repeat that on all of the different sides. When you run out of paint, it's okay. You're just going to use kind of a dry brush technique. Blending it in. And let's work to finish this whole top of the canvas with our first coat of white. There's more, okay? So you're doing the outside, your brush strokes are showing, it's okay. Don't worry about the brush strokes, don't start turning perfectionist on me. I know it's hard for some of you. We'll have a little bit of grace here. I guess I don't really want it to look like the rays of a sun coming out. So if my brush strokes aren't coming out like rays, that might be better. A little bit of water. If it's feeling too dry, but we do want it to cover with a little bit of blue coming in. You're working on the sides as well. Good things are happening. Don't you love all the depth? Some of you are nervous. It's going to be okay. By now, you should have a good deal of paint on your hands. If you don't, you're not really an artist. Or you're just really careful. Usually I go home and I just carry it with me. It's a kind of my badge of honor. Oh, you've been painting. Why, how could you tell? Once you have a pretty good cover, so you have your first single coat of white, we're going to add more. And if you have an even larger brush, go ahead and grab that, because the more, the bigger strokes you have, the faster you can move, the more you're going to cover. And we're going to move in as close as we can with the big brush, but kind of allowing what will almost look kind of like depth as we go in. Now watch this here. Can you see? Almost. So we're going in, but I want it to look as though there's layers. But because this is the second coat, you're going to get some more smoothness happening, some more opaque, kind of soften up on your brush strokes so that you get that nice white wash. And if you have little places of blue show through, that's good. But overall, we want it to show almost a journal depth. So you can take your brush strokes, kind of almost crisscross them over one another, like an X. How's that? So you can see that it's light around there, but it gets heavier, the white does, as you pull out. And even if you get some larger chunks of white, yeah, go ahead and leave them, because that texture is great. Put a little on the sides, but not too much, because as it's hanging on the wall, what you're going to get then is kind of a dimensional look. So it'll almost look like a shadow on the side if you leave that first layer on the side. So you see I'm doing it darker and then moving in, soft, soft. Brush strokes close to where I've been before, heavier. As I go out, that big brush is doing such a great job. Leaving a little blue around the edge, and definitely that first coat on the sides. Just let it be, let it speak. Little bits going in. So in areas where you say, oh, it's not perfectly cut, it's okay, because it's almost a painterly style that we're achieving here. Nobody's going to come up and say, oh my goodness, they didn't paint all the pods and everything perfect, the stamens in their places, and it's the impression almost of pure joy that we're painting. Go ahead and try to paint this area where you're going to have the word bloom, because it needs to be dry before you can add the word on top of it. So we'll give it a good coat, and you want it to be, you'll notice I'm almost kind of dry brushing it in because I want it to be creamy, but I don't want it to be thick, thick, thick. because I don't want it to take forever to dry. If at any time you need to get more titanium white, let's make sure that's available. You might notice that as I paint, you can see the end of my brush in the strokes. Just soften up, don't put it down so hard, almost sweep, as though you were sweeping feathers away, maybe. Perhaps you want it to be most opaque around the outsides of your painting, because you're kind of moving from here where it's not really translucent, but it is. It's at least allowing the color below it to show through, and we've done that consistently through the whole painting. But then adding this last layer is going to just really bring your painting to life, and it's going to add a lot of character. Go ahead and work at your own pace. And when you feel like the top of your background is done, the top, the sides, when you're pleased with the overall look, checking kind of to make sure that you've added enough color going fairly close into the first layer, so it's almost a fade out of color. So keep working on it a little bit, and then go ahead and take a quick break and work at your own speed, and I'll meet you to go ahead and add our theme word, bloom. When you look at your painting, I want you to remember our devotion and the ways that we talked about the desert blooming and about how God often in the layers and layers of our life and areas even where we think, where was God in those times. And yet when we look back and we can see his faithfulness as he is slowly creating in us this likeness of Jesus Christ. And the desert does bloom, and there is joy, and he is faithful to his promise. And over, talk to anybody who's been following Jesus for any length of time, and just watch as they light up and tell you about how he has worked, and how even in those darkest times of their life, they found that he was true and that he was there. I'll meet you when you're ready, and we're going to add in our word. Let's work on the wording. Our theme was bloom, and what I've done just on the back of a piece of paper is just kind of take a line, knowing that we're looking at 5 letters. Bloom is our word, which places the O, the first O at the center. So when you draw, we're drawing with caps, and we're going to be painting, filling in the center of both of the O's and the B for kind of a simple style lettering. I thought, is this the right size? Is this the right size? Do I want them fatter? But remembering always that the O is going to be at the center, which means I'm going to place it between the flowers and the top, the wording being in the centers, but that O being right in the center. Well, at the beginning of our time together in our materials section, I talked about having a pencil and an eraser. So I'm going to place our letters knowing that the center is right here. And the letters will go up just a little bit. I want them to be between the top of the bouquet and the top. So I'm going to draw a very light line. And I'm going to start with the letter O. Just as I drew out here, and I think I'm going to use these letters here, I'm going to take that O and place it right in the center. A good little fat O. I'm not doing it too darkly. I'm just going to be painting it in. And another 0, another O, and an M. You'll notice that I've left some space between the letters. This is just to kind of highlight the simple style of lettering that I'm using. So, take a moment. If this is not your style, then that's fine. Letter it the way you like. But my nice fat B, it's going to get totally filled in. And I have that word then, bloom. Get it to where you want it. And then we're going to be working with some of the blue that we began with, that background blue. Only we're going to mix a little water into it. Almost want it to be see-through. Yes, I want to see the brush strokes. You can see I've added enough water in that it's quite translucent. I'm using the smaller brush. I'll start with the B, outline the B, and then we're just going to fill it all in. If you work while it's still wet, it should just bleed into itself, kind of over the white. And that's okay. That's a really light, great look. We don't want those letters to be so bold. I'm making my letters about a little bit less than a 1/4 inch wide. I'm using that smallest brush. The O's, they're just super. If they look like eggs and not like O's, Oh well. Just fill them all in. Don't stress about the width of them. We're almost done. Easiest way to make that M is just to outline it like it is an M, and then to just keep layering it in to make it a little bit fatter. N's not perfect. Oh well, that's the style. I think that matches all of the rest of the painting. And I feel good about that. We have some choices about how we want to finish it. Definitely put your name on it. And you can take a Sharpie and do that. Know that what God sees in you is not what always you see in yourself. He sees what will be. He sees the finished product. He sees the masterpiece that is becoming after layers and layers of life has taught you the lessons of grace. Thanks for being with me right now.